Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. Today, I'm excited. I have Sandy Sembler, the woman's embodiment expert behind the SakredShe Method. Through her transformative approach, Sandy guides modern women to liberate their past, reclaim their power, and embrace their most authentic selves. Sandy, oh my God, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I can't wait to dive into our topic today.
I'm excited to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
So, okay, Sandy, how can the SakredShe Method help women, liberate their past and reclaim their own power?
That's a great question. Sacred She in itself is really my healing journey on how I healed from being a very masculine, super driven woman that was very detached from my body, detached from my emotions, and had a tendency to emasculate the men around me, including my own son, without
Yeah,
even realizing it, right? And so
yeah.
the Sacred She method really came about 10 years ago after an intervention with Tony Robbins. And I was able to actually dive in and study from teachers around the world. Like, how can I help more women
Yeah,
understand that it's not serving us to totally always be in go, go, go mode? Like, how
yeah.
can we learn to slow down? And so the
Mhm.
SakredShe method, what it is these tenets that I love to teach with from these different modalities. And what happens is it teaches us to slow down,
Mhm.
breathe into the body, make art out of our emotions, learn
Yeah.
to feel what we feel, which allows us to alchemize all of our past into something quite beautiful.
Yeah, and you make a good point. Like we always, sometimes the women now in this generation, we always feel like we need to go, go, go. And sometimes they have to feel like they're holding that more masculine energy of what you were talking about. And how do you feel like society plays a role in that today? Because,
Yeah.
the dynamics of relationships and things like that, like, do you think that because of society, it kind of made you feel like you had to be in this certain role of holding that more masculine energy dominance?
It's a great question. Honestly, I didn't even know what I didn't know, which is why I shifted my entire career into
Hmm.
teaching this the last decade. Because what I found out is that it wasn't, I was 41 when I discovered this work. So
Yeah.
um, I was very masculine and very driven because of
Hmm.
childhood trauma, and I didn't
Yeah.
even know it. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even know it. Like, my daddy left when I was 12. I've been working since
Yeah.
I was 12. It was survival. So a lot of it is very primal. I mean, masculine, feminine energetics, is actually, it's not gender specific. It's in actually both men and women, boys and girls. And so I do think society does play into that, yes. And I think that what's happening now is that it's more and more accepted for women to be shoulder to shoulder with men, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we're finding is that women are starting to really burn out because literally our bodies are not made to go, go, go like we are. And that's why we're
Yeah.
seeing some of the women with adrenal fatigue and things as
Mhm.
such. So yes, I think society plays into it. I also think that the women's lib movement was amazing for us.
Yeah.
And I also think that what happened is it did force us to be detached from our body. Now we're liberated. We're coming back. We're back
Yeah.
into we're reclaiming the feminine, which actually the feminine intuition is something that is needed. It's empathy,
Yeah.
right? It's
Mhm.
intuition, it's relating. And if more men would heal their own feminine energy, right? Just like I'm asking more women to heal their masculine energy, the world would be a better place.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. In your philosophy, you mentioned, how we do anything is how we do everything.
Yeah.
How does this mindset contribute to creating, a more profound experience in every aspect of life?
Well, I mean, for me, life is Earth School. I mean, we are
Mhm.
here to learn, and our biggest teachers are probably the ones that are giving us the biggest pain in our tush. Like, I think my son was probably my biggest teacher, and I also believe that our last 5% of healing happens in partnership because there's
Yeah.
no better teacher than someone who's going to trigger all of our childhood stuff.
Mhm.
So, how we do anything is how we do everything is actually a quote I got from Harvey T. Becker and Tony Robbins would share it as well. And again, for me, it's a moment to moment practice. Like, how are we being in life,
Yeah.
right? And how are we doing life is the masculine, right? And so they both are very, very important. I know before, honestly, I learned this work and understood it. I was I barely slowed down. I mean,
Mhm.
I got a lot of things done and did
Yeah.
very well in business and had great, beautiful relationships, not great relationships with partners, that's for
Yeah.
sure, because I had a tendency to attract people that I could just walk all over, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And I healed that, of course. But the thing is that I realized that I was missing the joy. And one thing I wanted to make sure I stressed here, because of the nature of your audience too, is
Yeah.
that, I didn't understand that mothering in itself, like, did you do your homework? The Christmas list, the presents, did we do
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Are we classroom, whatever it is very masculine.
It
It's
is.
task oriented.
Mhm.
But the art of mother, the nurturing, the
Yeah.
holding, it's the intuition, it's the feminine, right?
Yeah.
And quite frankly, there's more and more and more men who are getting 50-50 custody, right? So
Yeah.
they're actually very much in their feminine as well.
Mhm.
Anytime we see, a man playing with their kids outside, even when they're playing football, is
Yeah.
actually feminine. When we're playing, we are in our feminine,
Yeah.
period, end of story. In
Mhm.
fact, most kids are in their feminine until they go through puberty,
Mhm.
right? And the
Yeah.
reason
Okay.
why, scientifically, the reason why kids start, pushing up against us when they go through puberty, is because their testosterone kicks in, and
Yeah.
they're fighting their independence, which we want them to have their independence,
Mhm.
boys and girls, right?
Yeah.
Because it teaches them to have autonomy. These are things that no one taught me when I had my son, that boys go through their own hormonal piece. And
Yeah.
when I was going through menopause, my husband was going through what I call menopause.
Oh, yeah.
Our boys go through this as well. I was like,
You
wow,
do.
if someone would
Mhm.
have told me that, right,
Yeah.
years ago.
I know, it's crazy. And you were talking about like the 5%, you have that Art of Creative Relationships program, that focuses on that last 5% of healing, acquiring and occurring in relationships.
Yes.
So how do couples break the cycle of like repetitive patterns and complacency to deepen, their love and passion for each other?
Oh gosh, your questions are like so good, so good. I love just bouncing off of them. It gives me something neat to respond to. You know, my husband and I have been married now for 5 years, so clearly not our first rodeo. And we come to the table with our own baggage. And the people that come to work with me, generally it's women first, and then the men, they learn very quickly that it's not their fault, that they get to look in the mirror and own their own stuff. And then through the way I teach them how the art of communicating with their partner, they're able to ask their partner to come on board. Generally, is how it is. We're always Women are generally always the one, because we're more intuitive and
Yeah.
more feelings oriented. Like, we know when something's going on before they do, generally. And then so what happens is that when a woman can come and work with me, whether they're 19, I've had a 19-year-old and a 74-year-old, but whether they're single or in a long-term partnership, it's all the same. The teachings are all the same.
Yeah.
And because we all have our own childhood stuff, we have our attachment styles, we have our love languages, all the things. And
Mhm.
what we like to do is teach everyone how to basically regulate their own nervous systems.
Yeah.
It's not super sexy, honestly, to talk about nervous system regulation and
Yeah.
passion in the
But it
bedroom.
is important. It
It's
really
so
is.
important, because who wants to go in the bedroom when you're really ticked off at your partner? I mean, they didn't understand. It had nothing to do with them, and they reminded of something from way back then. And so again, when I was studying relationship and studying coach, I've been coaching over 20 years now, this all came up, these last little pieces, because of what my husband and I have been going through and alchemizing in our own relationship.
Yeah.
And my purpose is my dharma, I bring it to the world. So
Yeah.
how do we do that? In repetition. How we do anything is how we do everything. Teaching that, these marriages that people have been together for 25 years, it doesn't have to be boring. I mean, it's in that moment to moment practice. And so we have had over 200 relationships literally turn the car around and they're back on track.
Yeah.
Several, they were divorced and getting remarried, because they're able to actually look in the mirror and see. Now, it does take two. And
Yeah.
it does take two for sure, but it generally only takes one to get the car going in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, Sandy, it is Power Mom Chronicle times, and I cannot wait to know what your answers are. And my first one to you is, what's a game-changing lesson life has taught you?
A game-changing lesson. Wow, there's so many. I say the first one that comes to me is actually not take myself so seriously,
Yeah.
but also being able to look in the mirror and always realize that anytime I'm triggered, it's because of something that I need to take a look at within myself. That is the number one thing that I've learned in life up to my 52 years on this planet.
Yeah. And reflecting on your journey, what practical lessons or insights can our listeners use to improve their own lives?
Honestly, for me, the biggest pivot was, learning about the masculine and feminine energetics truly,
Mhm.
and not just to be girly or be more driven, really more in how we can harmonize these two and understand that as women, we could be just as successful out there, even if it's in the boardroom or in the playroom, simply by understanding, getting to know our bodies. We don't need to detach ourselves from our bodies. I will say this: when I went through menopause a few years ago, it really triggered a lot of eating disorder things I had back in
Yeah.
college because I felt
Mhm.
like my body was betraying me. So
Yeah.
understanding that my body really does keep score and my body is here to help me heal. So if it's giving me a little bit of I need to pay attention.
Yeah, it's
And
100% true.
right, that was one of my biggest lessons here, is to understand that my body really loves me. And if I'm feeling inflammation or feeling bloated, it's because something's going on in my body that isn't quite right. Instead of cursing her, like
Yeah.
her, I need to love her, like really love her,
Mhm.
because I mean, our body keeps score. It remembers what we
It
say to,
does. It does.
right?
It's
Yeah.
true. Very true.
Yeah.
And offer a piece of wisdom for moms striving to find their strength and voice, or to anyone really.
Well, I tell you, we have one of the things I was going to share with you is I have this great a sacred respect teaching women, and whether you're teaching or at Sunday school, you're teaching your own children, or you're just literally being an example because you're breathing
Mhm.
here on earth, and we all always have eyes watching
Yeah.
us. Understand that little guys want to serve us. Big guys want to too, believe it or not. But anytime that we are telling someone what to do, now obviously we have to parent
Mhm.
our kids, right?
Yeah.
But as they get older, give them their independence, right? We want them to launch out of the nest, which is a hard thing these days.
Yeah.
To honestly honor them, let them help. Even our little girls, if we're decorating the Christmas tree, let them put all the
Exactly.
decorations on the
Yeah.
bottom. And then if you want to go back later and do that, fine, but let them help you. That actually builds testosterone in men to
Yeah.
serve. And also with those guys, the little guys, they want to help us.
Yeah,
Let
me too.
them mess it up.
My little men, I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, two boys, and yeah, they're the best. Um,
That's wonderful. Congratulations on raising these beautiful, beautiful boys. And I'd love to actually, give you a sacred respect as a gift for us being on the show. And I will share that with basically it's a self-study course that actually teaches women how to honor the masculine within themselves and others, and how to deeply respect them in a way that's actually quite fun. I mean, it's
yeah.
pretty
Mhm.
surprising. It's a huge hit. I'd love to gift that to you. So I have Kelsey that's going to share that with you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I can't wait. And then my last question to you is the best advice you've ever received.
Oh gosh, the best advice I ever received is to slow down,
Mm,
to slow down and look up, slow down and look up. And
yeah.
always know that honestly, like God has our back. Like God really is. I think my grandmother was the one who told me, or imagine that you're sitting in God's lap
Mhm.
and you can feel a heartbeat of Creator behind us, just holding us tightly, and
Yeah.
just know that you're always being held.
Oh, I love that. Well, what a great way to end this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. Sandy, thank you so much for coming on the episode today. All of her links are down below in the show notes. Don't be shy, go say hi, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.